Hello friends, and welcome back to week 2 of our study on Henri Nouwen's The Return of the Prodigal Son. Last week in class we spent most of our time simply diving into the parable of the prodigal son itself, looking at that story again, reflecting upon it, and thinking about what it might have to speak into our lives at this time. And we also watched a video, or at least part of a video, of Nouwen talking about and teaching about how he understood what it was to be a beloved child of God. And I think that was just a good way for us to be introduced a bit to who Nouwen was and how he thought and how he talked and taught. But today what we are going to do is we're going to start digging more deeply into the book itself, and we're starting with materials that come out of the introductory section of this book, The Return of the Prodigal Son. And we will see how 3 things uniquely intertwine in this book. One is the story of the prodigal son itself, as found in the Gospel of Luke. The second, though, is Henri Nouwen's life, and Henri Nouwen at the place in his life where he was when he was writing this book, and also the place he was in his life as he discovered this painting. It was kind of a time of transition in his life, and this painting came to take on great meaning for him. And so the third portion of this study is also the intersection of this painting and the life of Rembrandt with the life of Nouwen and the story of the prodigal son. So in this intro section, we hear some about where Nouwen was in his life as he encountered this painting and began writing this book. If you have read the intro, then you know he talks about how he came to this painting at a time when he had been working very hard as an activist in Latin America, fighting for peace at that time. He was also working very hard as a professor and doing all sorts of this stuff in the midst of the fact that he was also a priest. And so having all of these functions working together, he was starting to get a bit burned out, and he was trying to figure out what he needed to do in his life at that time. And so after returning from some of his trips over in Latin America, he was in a friend's office at this time when he was feeling very depleted, and he noticed a poster on her wall, and the poster was a reproduction of the image of Rembrandt's The Return of the Prodigal Son. And so he was immediately drawn to the picture and felt it calling out to him spiritually. And he asked her who did the painting. He had to get a copy for himself very quickly. And eventually he made a trip over to St. Petersburg in Russia to go to the Hermitage to actually see the painting himself. And he wanted to see that painting and spend time with it. But over this time in his life, in the years that followed, when he discovered this painting, he also had a great transition in his professional life, where he left behind his teaching career and somewhat left behind his activism too, and spent time as the pastor at a l'Arche community, which is a community founded to provide a place for people to live who have profound mental disabilities. And so he served as a pastor at a l'Arche community for the latter part of his career, and it was a radical reorienting of everything about his life. And so he talks about, in this book, the intersections between this own journey in his life, this spiritual journey of trying to return back to who he felt like he was at his core, who it was that God created him to be, what it was that God was calling him to do at this point in his life, and then also how that intersected with this picture of the return of the prodigal son, and also how it even intersected some with the journey of the life of Rembrandt himself. And Nouwen found a spiritual companion both in Rembrandt and in this painting. And they both also happen to be of Dutch descent. And so that was an interesting connection between the two of them as well. But so today what we're going to do is we're going to look a little bit at the painting itself. We're going to think a little bit how art can be a window into the depths of the soul and the depths of the spiritual life. We're going to look at this painting and see what we observe in it. And we're also going to learn a little bit about the history of Nouwen's life and also a bit about the history of Rembrandt's life. And all of those things then will set the stage for our discussion in the next few weeks. And as we read ahead, we will see how Nouwen takes the prodigal son story and looks at it from three different perspectives through the primary lenses of the younger son and the elder son and then the father in the story. And each week we will unpack some of the themes that are found in the book, and we'll open it up for some discussion about where we see Nouwen having us think about what it is to be in relationship with God. So I hope you enjoy this second week of our study. I hope you enjoy getting to see the painting. Take some real time to carefully look at it. And it's a hard painting to see because it's painted in some really muted tones. And so it may not show up particularly well on the screen. So if you need to, go home and look it up on Google afterwards. Find it on something that you can really that you can zoom in on the screen and see the details of the art. And maybe that'll also help prepare you as we get to the lessons in the later weeks. But I hope you enjoy exploring this work of art today and enjoy getting to know a little bit more about the history of Nouwen and also of the artist Rembrandt. So thanks so much, and I will see you sometime soon. Enjoy your study today.